Hey, welcome back to the channel. I'm Kyle, and happy spooky season to everyone who celebrates. This is my favorite time of the year, and with that, I try to read as many horror books as I can through the month of October. We don't have a whole lot of time left, and I still have a pretty ambitious reading list, but I thought I'd share it with you today just to give you a sense of what I'm looking forward to perusing over the next few weeks. Okay, so we're going to tackle this from the books that I'm going to read most immediately to the books that I probably will struggle to get to by the end of the month before the new reading season starts in November. But it's an aspirational list, and I'm going to do my best. Root for me. So first on that list is Polyphemus by Michael Shea. Now, this is a collection of sci-fi, fantasy, and horror short stories that Shea wrote between the 70s and early 80s. And it's been out of print for some time, but the fine folks at Valancourt Books reprinted it last year and did a huge boon for the reading community in that this book has been highly sought after and was really expensive on secondhand markets. So now it's affordably available to everybody. Shea's a fascinating writer. He's written sequels to books by Jack Vance, such as he wrote a sequel to Eyes of the Overworld. He also wrote a sequel to The Color Out of Space by H.P. Lovecraft. And he also wrote his own original award-winning fantasy stories like Niftaleen, which beat out a George R.R. Martin book at the World Fantasy Awards, which is pretty incredible for a guy that probably not a lot of people have heard of or really read right now. It's been unfortunate to hear that a lot of his work has been out of print since his death in recent years. So unfortunately, he has been underread, but now we have, with Polyphemus's reprint, we have an opportunity for more people to see his work, including me, which is really great. You might know his work best, actually, from Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities series on Netflix, which adapted one of the stories in this collection, The Autopsy. And I think it was probably the best episode of that whole entire series that I hope actually returns someday soon. But I'm excited to get to it, and that's going to be the book I get to first. And then the next book I'm going to read is actually a full-fledged novel. It is Last Days by Adam Neville. Now, this was a recommendation from my girlfriend who read this earlier this year from a TikTok recommendation that she saw of really spooky books. And she told me that this was a really enjoyable read. It centers on a documentary filmmaker who is tracking the history of a ritualistic cult across the world. And as you can imagine, things don't go very well for him. I also like that character's name is Kyle, which I don't see a lot in horror fiction. So that'll probably add a little more immersion for me, just to hear my name or to read my name on a regular basis throughout the story. I did enjoy the adaptation of The Ritual that I saw on Netflix, which was one of Neville's earlier books. Again, I have not read that book, but I thought the film was quite good. So that gives me some confidence going in that I'll probably enjoy Last Days. And then the third book on my list is another Valancourt reprint, In a Lonely Place by Carl Edward Wagner. Wagner, I know more as an editor of various horror anthologies, and I do know he has a pretty lengthy history of sword and sorcery fiction as well through the Kane series that I have not read, but I have many friends who swear by it as one of the sort of better post-Conan muscle-bound sword guys. But I was drawn to this more immediately because this collection is really highly acclaimed. And it also includes a story called Styx, which many people say is the inspiration for the Blair Witch Project, while also being a tie into the Cthulhu mythos. I'll get to that pronunciation in a second. Not Cthulhu, Cthulhu. And I've been pretty pumped to read it. So, I like to switch between short story collections and novels as I go through a lot of these monthly reading journeys. So that will be the next short story collection I get to, and I am pumped for it. Now, here's a big blind spot. It's The Silence of the Lambs by Thomas Harris. Now, I, of course, have seen The Silence of the Lambs. and it's prequels and it's sequels, and I've seen Manhunter, and I've watched Hannibal. I've seen all the Hannibal Lecter fiction that could be amassed. Some of it I wish I hadn't seen, but The Silence of the Lambs is one of my favorite horror films. It's like saying, "Oh, Citizen Kane's one of my favorite movies." It's just kind of a ridiculous statement to make that is really, really eye-opening. Let me tell you, but I've never read the book. And a good friend of ours read it recently and raved about it, finally getting a chance to read it on her Goodreads. And that really prompted me towards taking a look at it myself. Not only that, because I'm also working on my own sort of crime fiction horror hybrid. So I am really looking forward to digging in deeper into the source material for what I think is one of the great Oscar winners. And last, certainly not least, but hopefully it's something I will have time to get to, is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. I just think this title kicks ass. I think it's one of the best horror titles I've heard in a while. I hear nothing but praise for Jones's work, so I want to read it. And based on just the description, it sounds a bit like Peter Straub's Ghost Story in terms of its like basic setup, but it sounds like it also dives in deeper into this sort of shared pain that exists within the indigenous community too, of which Jones is a member. And I'm really interested in learning a little bit more about that perspective, as well as perhaps what kind of horror could be shifted from that POV. So I'm looking forward to that book quite a bit. It's been on my shelf for a long time, and good Lord willing, I'll be able to get to it before October ends. Okay, and just as like a little bonus, there was a brand new audiobook, and I know not all of you are audiobook readers or listeners, but I really swear by them. I listen to them pretty regularly during my day, especially as I'm doing chores around the house or going shopping or doing things that are pretty monotonous like laundry. So there's a brand new audiobook of Lovecraft stories that Leslie Klinger had edited for Audible. And one of the things that I had always been kind of bemoaning is that a lot of the early pulp fiction that you find on Audible tends to be, as it's in the public domain, anybody can record it. And there's a lot of sort of amateur recording, which makes it a little more difficult to listen to, especially when you're already kind of dealing with something that's kind of purple. But this new recording has a lot of professional readers that I'm familiar with. I just listened to The Call of Cthulhu, which I'd learned that's how it is actually pronounced, not Cthulhu. I told this to my girlfriend, and she said, "That's stupid. I'm never doing that." But I'm just telling you, that's what Leslie Klinger said. And I listened to that story with Matt Godfrey reading it, who's one of my favorite audiobook narrators. And it just really heightened it to an insane degree. So I'm going to be listening to that too during my workouts and during sort of my slower days. Now, what are you guys reading? That's what I'm curious about. Let me know what you're going to be taking on in the comments. And if you've read any of these books, have thoughts on them, please let me know that too. I'd love to be able to get a sense of what I'm jumping into beforehand. Anyway, happy spooky season. We'll see you next time.